The man fought for a ray of hope in the underground labyrinth surrounded by powerful enemies. He dug 3 feet underground just to harvest the precious and rare velvet gem. Only such a gem. Only then can he summon the powerful warriors of the Garo tribe. Facing the powerful monsters targeting him in war, the suddenly appearing spatial fluctuations let Domi realize that it is Jim's return. Jim walked out of the spatial rift. He immediately asked about the situation in Labyrinth with concern. After receiving Domi's reassuring reply that everything was normal, he then relievedly took off his heavy backpack and started rummaging through it. This inevitably aroused Domi's curiosity, and she was about to step forward to take a closer look. But the next second, she stood there dumbfounded. Hundreds of velvet gems, large and small, were all poured into the central mechanism of the labyrinth by Jim. She suppressed her inner excitement and carefully asked about the origin of the gem. Upon learning that such a large number of gems were merely picked up along the way, she sighed in her heart that she had been deceived by him again. But this time, the deception made her feel so loved. Although most of them are low-grade gemstones, the large quantity can still be considered a small gain. This allows Jim to summon hundreds of level 1 to 2 Garo warriors. However, considering the weak combat effectiveness of low-level soldiers, they will not have much impact on the upcoming war. What they urgently need right now are high-level warriors with strong combat capabilities. At the thought of this, Jim decided to take a gamble. He decisively spent 100 gems to upgrade the labyrinth to level 5 first. At that time, he will be able to summon a level 5 berserker to deal with the war. At the same time, he also considers the weak basic defense of the labyrinth. He then spent gems to summon a level 4 door guardian beast. On the other side, Lisa has already finished the task of drawing the route map for the Vermilion Panther territory. Along the way, Lisa kept replaying the details of this plan in her mind. She recalled the decision made by the Flood Dragon King at that time to cross through, rather than bypass, the Vermilion Panther territory. She deduced that it would definitely use siege beasts to dig a tunnel directly from Vermilion Panther to the Garo Labyrinth. In that case, the battle will break out in 1 week. The strength between the two sides is vastly different. Garo Labyrinth will only end up being slaughtered and swallowed. Suddenly, a terrifying beast roar interrupted her thoughts. A terrifying giant beast is crouching at the entrance of the Garo Labyrinth, about to attack her. At this moment, a stern voice from the side stopped the door guardian beast's movement. Lisa's return surprised Jim as well. She had already explored and drawn the map so quickly. During the interval when Jim was importing the map, Lisa made a surprising discovery. In just 1 day, a lot more Garo warriors unexpectedly appeared. She pondered silently in her heart about the speed at which troops were being recruited. Perhaps in a few days, they would indeed have the power to conquer the Vermilion Panther. Unexpectedly, after Jim imported the map, they were going to set off immediately to conquer the Vermilion Panther. This made Lisa extremely frightened. She immediately spoke out to stop it. Just because she thought they were just a few soldiers in front of her. Going would be just like sending herself to death. But Jim did not listen to her advice and insisted on going his own way. He even asked her to accompany him. She immediately refused. After all, she didn't want to die in vain. Unexpectedly, Jim's face suddenly changed drastically, and a murderous intent emerged. Under the threat of coercion, Lisa had no choice but to lower her head and submit. Time passes quickly. At this point, the team has already entered the territory of the Vermilion Panther. Lisa timely reminded them not to make any more noise. They must remain silent. Although the Vermilion Panther is not strong in defense, it is highly vigilant. It is also skilled in stealth and ambush. So from now on, keep your spirits up and be prepared for ambush battles. However, Lisa's nervousness did not affect Jim. She just boldly walked forward without looking back. He then carefully took 2 steps back. He also gave a signal to the Garo warrior behind him. The Garo warriors immediately stopped in their tracks. Only Jim continued to walk slowly behind Lisa. At this moment, a faint sense of unease arose in Lisa's heart. She could feel the unusually eerie atmosphere around her. A seemingly invisible sense of danger was locking onto her, making her shudder involuntarily. Her heart was filled with a great sense of shock. Could it be that the Vermilion Panther was lurking nearby? Unexpectedly, as soon as this thought arose, she realized something was amiss. Suddenly, she became aware that the chilling murderous intent was coming from behind. She was startled and unconsciously stopped in her tracks. Just at this moment, a sinister and terrifying voice sounded. "Lisa, if you dare to turn around, blood will splatter on the spot." This moment made her hair stand on end. But soon she calmed herself down. She asked Jim why in a trembling voice, unaware that Jim had secretly used some eerie methods on her. Suddenly, several chilling tentacles emerged from half of his body. "Since the moment you appeared, I just found out that you have been quietly observing everything inside the labyrinth. And you seem very disdainful of the way I manage things. I don't care how you judge Garo Labyrinth. I call the shots on my turf. I genuinely defend my friends. If it's an enemy, I won't hesitate to kill them. And we still can't be certain whether we're friends or enemies." At this moment, Jim's hands are crawling with the wriggling tentacles of the parasite. Lisa was convinced in her heart that Jim only had suspicions about her. There was no substantial evidence. So she began to justify herself. "Master, I was indeed employed by the Flood Dragon King as a mercenary before. I have never tried to hide this experience. Who would conspire to reveal their past work history? Are you angry because of the attempt to kill you the first time we met? I admit I was indeed rude at that time. Here I sincerely apologize to you. Now I work for you, risking danger to secretly return to the Flood Dragon King to obtain information. However, I am faced with your suspicion and questioning." While Lisa is talking in circles, Jim listens with great interest. Because he has gone to great lengths for Lisa, he is very confused by her actions that triggered the two labyrinth wars. So he straightforwardly questions Lisa about her true intentions. In response, Lisa remains firm in her belief that she has not shown any signs of wrongdoing. Therefore, she strongly denies any accusations. Her response has gradually caused Jim to lose patience. Unconsciously, his tentacles become increasingly restless. The parasite on his body had silently crawled to Lisa's feet. "Lisa, I have some bad news to tell you. I don't know if you have heard of this special creature called the parasite." Lisa had naturally heard of it, but had never seen it with her own eyes. "I have one on my body. Unfortunately, you have one on your body too." Upon hearing this, Lisa's heart trembled suddenly. Suddenly, an uncomfortable sticky sensation spread up her arm. She turned her head, and was almost scared stiff. The horrifying and terrifying parasite. It was not clear when it had already climbed onto her arm. However, in the blink of an eye, the tentacles of the parasite had spread all over her body. Entity climbed up her face at an extremely fast speed. It seemed like it was going to devour her whole. At this moment, Jim's voice also faintly came through. "Since the first time I met you, I secretly placed the parasite fragments on you. So I know everything that has happened to you recently. Is there anything else you want to say now? Things have come to this." Lisa feels like a clown for her previous actions. So she once again pleaded for another chance. "I have begun to appreciate you. This shameless and unscrupulous behavior ends now." Jim even withdrew the fragment of the parasite that had attached to Lisa. "The Lord of Garo had to admit that I really underestimated you. In fact, I have no connection with the Dragon Labyrinth or the Garo Labyrinth. All I did was seek revenge and become the Elf King. But I haven't finished my story yet." She suddenly felt a surge of imminent death, which made her unable to resist turning around. Just as she turned around, Jim also made a move in an instant. The long sword in his hand stabbed towards me. "I told you that you would die if you turned around. Why didn't you listen?" The long-eared elf was being held captive by a monstrous creature that seemed neither human nor non-human. He warned that there would be a disaster if she turned around. But rebellion was inherent in her character. Faced with Jim's sudden sword attack, Lisa had no way to avoid it. Unexpectedly, at the last moment, the sword veered off course and spared Lisa. Lisa, who thought she was destined to die, was now heavily knocked down to the ground. She felt the sharp sword energy just pass by her face, leaving her utterly incredulous. However, the scene before her made her hair stand on end even more. She suddenly realized that if it weren't for Jim's interception, she would probably have been torn to shreds by the Vermilion Panther's claw by now. I didn't expect that in just a few breaths, I had already teetered on the brink of life and death twice. At this moment, Jim relied on the potential endowed by Parasite. He dealt with the situation calmly, with a balanced offense and defense, handling it with ease. While Vermilion Panther has a huge body. However, he moves agilely with his body, making it difficult for Jim to gain the upper hand for a while. But as the speed of Vermilion Panther increased, Jim found himself somewhat at a loss. He then flipped over and landed on the ground. He activated Parasite's potential to its peak in an instant. Tentacles crawled all over his body, giving him a terrifying and monstrous appearance. He seized the opportunity and leaped up with swords in both hands. He thrust them towards Vermilion Panther head-on. He succeeded with one strike and sent Vermilion Panther flying. He crashed heavily onto the ground. However, Jim did not expect another attack to follow closely. But the Vermilion Panther swiftly dodged away, leaving Jim empty-handed. Lisa, who had been observing the battle all along, had to admit Jim's strength at this moment. But as a proud elf, she still looked down on humans, even though the person in front of her didn't quite look like a human. Jim's voice sounded from the side at this moment. I will finish counting your bill first before looking for you to settle it slowly. Of course, you can also take this opportunity to sneak away now. But if I run into you again next time, you won't even have a chance to speak. Lisa believed without a doubt upon hearing this, because she had just experienced Jim's ruthlessness. She stood there, unable to make a decision for a moment. The Vermilion Panther, on the other hand, watched the two vigilantly from the side, as if waiting for an opportunity to act. However, Jim was a little apprehensive at this moment. Igniting the potential of Parasite. It brings great expenditure to his physical strength. The current situation is urgent and requires swift and decisive action. Suddenly, Lisa's scream interrupted his thoughts. He looked up. Just behind the Garo warrior, another Vermilion Panther appeared. He didn't have time to warn the mage before fresh blood splattered the scene. In a moment of urgency, Jim immediately exerted force from his feet and shot off quickly. Unexpectedly, he was stopped by the Vermilion Panther, who had been waiting on the sidelines for an opportunity to act. He was instantly full of sorrow and indignation, but powerless to act. But what's worse is facing such a dangerous situation. His physical strength is also about to be exhausted. Unfortunately, he can only remove the parasitic state. He confronts the Vermilion Panther with a sword in hand. What he didn't expect was that Lisa drew her sword at this moment, intending to help. However, Jim did not appreciate Lisa's actions. He told her to just watch from the sidelines and not cause trouble by coming over. On the other hand, the individual quality of Garo Berserker is also demonstrated at this moment. The priest being protected within is chanting a spell to heal the mage. Although the injuries are serious, there is no immediate danger to his life after treatment. They all know. Mage holds an extraordinary place in Jim's heart. He has decided to protect him at all costs. So he faced the powerful Vermilion Panther without any fear, swinging his blade. But faced with such a gap in strength, his attacks could not harm the Vermilion Panther. He was nearly injured by a casual swipe from the Vermilion Panther's claw, which almost severed his arm. The gushing blood triggered the Berserker's ferocity. He once again wielded his knives with all his might and slashed at the Vermilion Panther. Unexpectedly, the blade in his hand was shattered by the sharp fangs of the Vermilion Panther. The horrifying scene immediately made him frightened and trembling. Taking advantage of the horned Berserker's distraction, the Vermilion Panther's tail suddenly lashed out. He was unable to dodge in time, and was instantly whipped several meters away. After the smoke and dust cleared, the horned berserker was covered in wounds all over his body. He struggled to prop up half of his body, only to be greeted by a shocking sight. It was a tragic scene where Garo Guard was picked up by Vermilion Panther at the waist. Despite being in such a predicament, Guard's broken sword continued to stab at Vermilion Panther non-stop. But all this effort is in vain, as he still couldn't harm Vermilion Panther in the slightest. He was eventually pinned down by Vermilion Panther's foot on his tail. Immediately, he tightly clenched his teeth and vigorously shook his head. The next second, he was ruthlessly torn apart like a rag. Watching his tribesmen die in front of him made the berserker overwhelmingly sorrowful. He recalled scenes from the past. He wants to live on. He wants to witness with his own eyes the bright future that Jim promised to the Garo tribe. He swears to follow the monarch to resist all foreign enemies to his death. He abruptly sprung up. He tightly wrapped around the huge mouth of the Vermilion Panther with one hand. But before he could make any move, his body was coiled by the tail of the Vermilion Panther. He was heavily thrown to the ground, raising dust everywhere, in order to prevent the Vermilion Panther from taking the opportunity to kill him. Another berserker rushed to the front in a panic. He raised his hand and aimed a slash at Vermilion Panther's jaw, successfully attracting Vermilion Panther's attention. But the berserker was also knocked away by Vermilion Panther's claws. The blade injured his arm. He also opened his blood basin-like mouth, wanting to bite it to death with one bite. At a critical moment, a system pop-up window appeared. The Savior Hall responded to Horned Berserker's wish. The one-armed berserker, who was originally destined to be dismembered, narrowly escaped being bitten by the giant mouth. It turns out that the Horned Berserker pulled the tail of the Vermilion Panther from behind. It was this action that caused the Vermilion Panther to shift its position and save its companion. But at this moment, the Horned Berserker was engulfed in a ball of faint blue flame. The Vermilion Panther also seemed frightened by the scene before its eyes, and for a moment, both forgot to break free from their restraints. The ball of faint blue flame seemed to have a life of its own as it moved and spread on the Horned Berserker, especially terrifying as it burned the flesh underneath the flames. He was originally a berserker with long horns, who only knew how to grab a big club. However, his strength was limited. He could only watch helplessly as his tribespeople were cruelly killed by monsters. He, overwhelmed with grief and anger, unexpectedly awakened his bloodline power. The awakening fire engulfing his body completely transformed his appearance. Along with it surged a fierce and violent power, as if reborn through baptism of fire. However, describing his appearance is a bit difficult. With a roar, the terrifying power erupted, capable of sending the Vermilion Panther flying with a single swing. He was fiercely smashed to the ground. Intense pain instantly ignited the Vermilion Panther's ferocity. The razor-sharp giant claws angrily slammed down. Never expected to be easily subdued by the Horned Berserker this time. He then immediately raised his hand and swung a powerful punch. A crisp sound of flesh breaking and bones cracking. The claws of the Vermilion Panther unexpectedly broke in response. Intense pain that reaches the heart through the fingers, instantly causing the Vermilion Panther to let out a deafening howl. However, the attack of the Horned Berserker came one after another, picking up the broken claw and swinging it backhanded towards the Vermilion Panther's chin, instantly silencing the Vermilion Panther's howl. His figure was directly sent flying, hitting heavily against the rock wall. "I'll smash your teeth, so you can't even scream." At this moment, the awakening fire on the body of the Horned Berserker has dissipated, and both the figure and appearance have undergone earth-shattering changes. Lisa, who witnessed everything from the side, had a blank mind. She had an expression of disbelief on her face, murmuring to herself, "That guy could actually awaken his bloodline autonomously and evolve into the savior form." Although Jim had emphasized before I came that each of his subordinates had impressive strength, But Lisa knows that the conditions for evolving into a savior are extremely strict. First, one must have a certain level of experience. Then, the conditions can only be triggered through practice or enlightenment. Although transforming into a savior is possible, it is an extremely rare occurrence. And each person's situation is different. There is no set path to follow at all. At this point, she silently gazed at Jim's back. Garo the Lord, how many scares have you prepared for me? However, Jim looked confused. He had no idea what had happened. He had just found out about the changes of Horned Berserker from a pop-up window in the system. In that case, he no longer held back. He fully unleashed the potential of Parasite. Countless parasitic tentacles burst out of the body at once. The scene was terrifying and shocking. On the other side, the Horned Berserker stood facing off against the Vermilion Panther, holding a broken claw in hand. The intense battle earlier made the Vermilion Panther hesitant to attack again. He instead lunged towards the weak and armless Berserker. At the critical moment, the speed of the Horned Berserker suddenly exploded. He darted forward to shield his companion, swinging his broken claws fiercely. However, Vermilion Panther was even faster. The strike only hit its afterimage. A missed strike enraged the Horned Berserker. He angrily cursed at the scattered enemies around him. "Come out and face me one-on-one." Lisa, who was standing nearby, was speechless. Although the Berserker had evolved into a savior, his temperament clearly had not improved. Actually, this is the Vermilion Panther style of fighting. It often hides in the dark to find the right moment to strike. He will replenish the consumed energy. But the current situation on the field is very unfavorable for the Horned Berserker, because he still needs to protect his injured companions. He can't go all out. At this moment, the mage, dragging his injured body, stood up. But before the Horned Berserker could speak to stop him, the figure of the Vermilion Panther had already taken the opportunity to flash behind him. The blood-filled mouth full of sharp fangs instantly arrived. Suddenly, the mage's staff in hand moved vigorously. At the same time, chanting an incantation from the mouth. Clustered sharp ice cones sprang from the ground, not only blocking the attacks from the Vermilion Panther, but also protecting everyone within. However, with the casting of magic, the once stable injuries worsened once again. But he still weakly uttered, "Go, with this ice wall protecting us, you don't have to worry about us anymore. Unleash your power and go crazy." At this point, he has understood Mage's good intentions. "All right, as you wish. I will bring your intentions to Vermilion Panther." Wait for him to turn around again. Suddenly, a fierce aura surged up. His broken claws fiercely smashed down, causing the ground to crack with tremendous force. The collapse extended all the way to the feet of the Vermilion Panther. Immediately, he raised the broken claw. He aimed in the direction of the Vermilion Panther and threw with all his might. While the Vermilion Panther was dodging the broken claws, he took the opportunity to lift up a huge rock beside him. The sudden huge rock caught Vermilion Panther off guard, making it unable to dodge in time and get hit. Unbeknownstly, this further provokes the ferocity of Vermilion Panther. It endures the intense pain and strikes down with a claw. The Berserker with a horn presses forward instead of retreating, using all their strength to resist by meeting the opponent head-on and elbowing fiercely. Then he skillfully repeated the move, and once again broke its advantage in claws. Immediately, he planned to stab the broken claw into the eye of the Vermilion Panther with his backhand. This immediately made the Vermilion Panther extremely terrified. It flashed away and disappeared without a trace. Shameless scoundrel, using this trick again. Can't win, just hide. He raised the broken claw, searching for the figure of the Vermilion Panther in the field. But soon, he found out that he had underestimated the shamelessness of the Vermilion Panther. Just because the Vermilion Panther, at this moment, is using the ice cone summoned by the mage to protect itself. But this time, the Vermilion Panther miscalculated. The ice cones, originally lifeless, unexpectedly came to life like a snake, trapping its body within. No need to think, This must be the work of the mage. In the blink of an eye, the horned berserker leaped onto the head of the vermilion panther and tightly squeezed the vermilion panther's mouth shut. Let's see how you escape this time. Unexpectedly, his figure was once again entwined by the tail of the vermilion panther. A thrilling scene suddenly unfolded. He bit its tail. With the vermilion panther's mournful wail, its tail also snapped in two. Don't cry out so miserably, you're overreacting a bit. This is just the beginning, he said, as he gazed in horror at the self-illuminating vermilion panther and raised the severed claw in his hand. The man just found the monster on the roadside's mouth too smelly. He unreasonably rode straight onto the monster's head. Unexpectedly, the monster also fought back by swinging its tail, tightly entangling the man. He didn't hesitate to bite the tea-studded club that was offered to him. The crisp texture made him unable to stop, and he bit it off in one go. He said he would do it, picked up the broken claw, and smashed it towards the head of the vermilion panther. I don't know how long he smashed it for. The vermilion panther finally crashed down in a final howl. This guy is really hard to deal with. But this big guy should be enough to last for 10 days or so. At this moment, the cheers from the side caught his attention. It turned out that Jim had already taken care of the other vermilion panther and was waiting on the side. The berserker immediately bowed down to pay respect to his sovereign upon hearing the horn. Facing Jim's praise did not make him happy. Instead, he fell into deep self-blame due to the sacrifice of his fellow tribesmen. Jim naturally saw through his thoughts. He didn't want the newly awakened savior to be caught up in any post-traumatic stress from the battle. He sternly admonished, "Whether it's a soldier or you, everyone is willing to die for Garo. If you become powerful, you should consider yourself responsible for everyone. Then you are too arrogant." Jim's words instantly woke up the horned berserker. Seeing that his warning had an effect, he immediately seized the opportunity to strike while the iron was hot. He appointed Horned Berserker as the commanding general of the Garo Labyrinth and bestowed the name Bo upon him. He was suddenly filled with tears of excitement. He immediately vowed to be loyal and willing to die for his cause. This scene made Lisa, who was standing aside, no longer doubt Jim's ability to manage the labyrinth. She was also surprised at how well he understood human nature. He ordered Bo to bring the injured mage and vermilion panther back to the labyrinth for treatment. He solemnly reminded to be careful in handling the situation, because the vermilion panther is still alive. I wanted to capture both alive. However, the vermilion panther he fought with was accidentally killed by him. He also obtained a vermilion panther's heart, which contains the fierce power of the vermilion panther. The harvest from this operation was indeed meager. Of course, he was saying this for Lisa behind him to hear. Previously, in order to instigate Jim to march and conquer Vermilion Panther, it was claimed that there were a large number of gems hidden here. Lisa could naturally hear the sarcasm in these words. She hurriedly bowed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he let Lisa make one final choice. If she submits to Garo Labyrinth, he can help Lisa seek revenge, eliminate the Elf King, and rescue her family. But he didn't mention the consequences if she doesn't submit. Unexpectedly, Lisa was frank. She wants to wait until the war between Jim and the Flood Dragon King ends before making a decision. However, as soon as the words fell, she was firmly grasped by a large hand around her neck. "So, you intend to join the side that will ultimately win. I guess you still don't understand your situation. You are the first person to survive after betraying me for so long. Don't test my patience anymore. You must make a choice now." The terrifying parasitic tentacles crawled onto Lisa's face again. This is not a multiple-choice question. It's clearly a fatal question. Inside the Garo Labyrinth, Domi is arranging the spoils brought back by Bo. Before long, Jim also returned to the labyrinth. However, surprisingly, Lisa was still following behind him. It seems like Lisa got the multiple-choice questions correct. At this moment, her appearance surprised Domi. She is one of the only two people inside the labyrinth who know that Lisa is a spy. Suddenly, she turned her face into a fierce expression and glared at Lisa, saying, "Don't act like this, Domi. Lisa is now also considered one of us." Then he changed the subject. He asked Lisa to inform everyone about the intelligence of Flood Dragon King. After learning that Flood Dragon King would arrive in 5 days, Jim also immediately made preparations for the upcoming war. He ordered Bo to lead the soldiers to build watchtowers and set traps in front of the labyrinth. At the same time, make sure he trains all the soldiers within 3 days. He plans to go underground himself to get some gems. By the way, he plans to bring back some human weapons from the surface. He agreed to come back in 3 days. By then, we will make a battle plan based on Lisa's intelligence. Meanwhile, Flood Dragon King's army is being cleared a path by Siege Beast. They are advancing mightily towards Garo Labyrinth. The two before us are the generals who are following the Flood Dragon King on this expedition, Zack and Axel. He is a dominant force in the underground labyrinth, using his immense power to slaughter ruthlessly and enslave other weaker factions. He currently leads a team composed entirely of monsters. They are marching mightily towards the direction of the Garo Labyrinth. 5 days later, under Jim's command, the Garo Labyrinth will be managed. They have long been prepared and ready for battle. After Jim's summoning in recent days, they have gathered a large number of troops. Even the scarce mages have increased to 5. Domi also took this opportunity to consolidate the reconnaissance information gathered by Lisa. The total number of enemy troops is 121. Among them are 100 ordinary soldiers and 18 berserkers at the commander level. 2 saviors of enormous size, like the Door Guardian Beast, and the Flood Dragon King personally leading the charge. After hearing the report, Jim was surprised to find that the other side did not have long-range attack capabilities. But the opponent is a long-standing force entrenched underground, labyrinth. He also has to be careful. When he was still pondering countermeasures, Domi's exclamation interrupted his thoughts. Looking up, he saw billowing smoke ahead. He could already vaguely make out the figures of the enemy troops. He saw that a big battle was about to break out. Lisa brought up the map. She briefly reviewed the battle deployment with Jim again. Following Jim's gesture, Domi immediately issued the combat orders. The soldiers have been dispatched, but who will lead the vanguard? He looked towards the yellow dragon, who had been skulking around surreptitiously the whole time. "I think you must have been very fulfilled these days." No, master, you're really good at joking. I don't want to be treated as a practice target anymore. Since that's the case, then prove that you have other abilities besides being a live target. Yellow Dragon was once again tricked by Jim onto the battlefield. As soon as he appeared, he was recognized by the enemy. They were old acquaintances, who had worked together in the Dragon Labyrinth before. Now Yellow Dragon has betrayed and joined the Garo Labyrinth. He naturally attracted their ridicule and sarcasm. Is Garo Labyrinth devoid of anyone else? They actually sent someone like you, who claims to be the descendant of the Dragon Clan, to come out and seek death. In the meantime, Zack was secretly observing the lineup of the Garo Labyrinth. Unexpectedly, this look made him involuntarily tremble inside, becoming cautious. Just because he was in the town of Garo, he noticed that several mages seemed to be brewing magic. He immediately decided to take the initiative. Immediately he raised his arm and called out. The monsters behind him swarmed forward, pouncing towards the Garo camp. He also took the opportunity to retreat to the leader's side, issuing an extermination plan specifically targeting the Garo mage. He then relaxed and confidently went into battle against the Yellow Dragon. He was seen fiercely leaping up with a vigorous kick. With 2 huge blades in hand, he bravely chopped down. However, facing Zack's lethal strike, Yellow Dragon unexpectedly did not dodge or evade. A crisp sound of metal clashing. A familiar scene unfolded once again. Yellow Dragon, struck by the giant blade, miraculously emerged unscathed. Zack was momentarily stunned, then swiftly swung his blade again. Yet still, no harm was done. I refuse to believe this. In an instant, his speed surged rapidly. His figure turned into several shadows of people. At the same time, he slashed towards Yellow Dragon. But the more he slashed, the more alarmed he became. Domi, who had been closely monitoring the situation on the field, now also worried about Yellow Dragon. Master Yellow Dragon hasn't moved at all. Could he have been scared silly again? Jim quietly raised his hand, indicating to Domi not to worry. As you know, this guy is deathly afraid. Exactly for this reason, he is very good at assessing the strength of his opponents. The reason he is currently on the defensive and getting hit may be because he is gauging the strength of his opponent. Another explanation made Domi even more confused. The weakness of the Yellow Dragon is on its back. Yet it didn't seem to dodge. I have to say, Jim is always very patient when facing Domi. He spoke again to clarify. It should also be a slick move. He is testing whether the opponent knows his weakness. Generally speaking, this guy is strong against the strong and weak against the weak. At the same time, Zack, who has achieved nothing, almost had a mental breakdown. He used up his last bit of faith and unleashed his most powerful move. Holding two huge blades imbued with fierce and domineering power, he slashed towards the head of the Yellow Dragon. The massive collision caused the huge blades to shatter at the moment of contact with the Yellow Dragon. This time, Zack's mentality really completely collapsed. His face was full of disbelief. Suddenly, Yellow Dragon reached out with both hands and firmly restrained Zack. You dare to mock me, a lowly dragon, with your kind of trash. You are a weak-blooded lizard. Today, I will show you the basic skills of a descendant of the dragon clan. As soon as the words fell, he spewed out a horrifying dragon breath, and the scorching dragon flames instantly engulfed Zack, burning him to ashes. In the blink of an eye, Zack was burned beyond recognition, crumbling to the ground like mud. Then he was grabbed by the Yellow Dragon. Zack, you disappoint me greatly. I originally thought that you flood dragons are also descendants of the dragon clan. You should be immune to fire, right? It seems that your bloodline is not as pure as mine. Another dragon breath sprayed from the Yellow Dragon's mouth. Directly burned Zack to ashes. Resolved. Zack casually struck a pose he thought was cool. This guy really hasn't changed at all. I was really impressed by his series of moves. Seeing Zack being killed. At the same time, fearing that the Yellow Dragon's dragon breath might come again. Suddenly caused Zack's subordinates to panic and scatter in all directions. Unexpectedly, these fleeing soldiers were caught by the sudden appearance of a huge claw. It turned out to be a commander-level monster under Zack's command. You cowards who fled in the face of the enemy. Just let you go and execute the plan to hunt down the Garo mage. With that, he raised the soldier and threw him towards the position of the mage within the Garo camp. Soldiers of the giant dragon labyrinth flew towards the Garo camp like cannonballs, in a bizarre and incredible manner. Is this the long-range attack method of the giant dragon labyrinth?